Hey guys, and welcome back to the official podcast of Develop Beyond Unplugged. And in this episode, we're going to be talking about creating realistic expectations. And what do I mean by that? Well, how many of you have started a new relationship? Can be a job, can be a romantic relationship, it can be a marriage, it can be, adopting a kid. I mean, anything where you're starting a new chapter and you're communicating, this is who I am, this is what I can do for this dynamic, for this relationship. And when we start those new chapters, what sometimes happens is we end up being a bit bad at being honest about who we are. We end up setting false expectations, we oversell ourselves, or we try to be something we're not because we're afraid of being judged, we're afraid of being rejected, and that can be a big problem. So what we want to look at is really, how can we be honest? How can we be honest? Don't sell ourselves short. It's not about being self-deprecating, but yes, maybe set expectations that are very easy to meet and exceed those expectations instead of setting super high expectations and then falling short. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. Obviously, we're going to talk a little bit about personality theory, like we do in every episode. But really what we want to talk about is how when there are different personalities at play, different instincts, different ways of being, it can be very hard for an introvert to sustain a very extroverted lifestyle and vice versa. So sometimes we can adapt out of generosity, out of collaboration, to please our partners, to please our colleagues, to get stuff done. But if we try to sustain a constant situation that's outside of our comfort zone, things get complicated. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Today, I'm joined by my dear mother and my sister. And let's get into it.
Yeah. I mean, how often we introduce ourselves and we try to show the best of us. Mm-hmm. But behind it is the thought, I'm not good enough, you know?
Yeah.
And you really don't allow yourself to express your desires, your needs, and you agree to everything.
Yeah.
I don't know if it has happened to any of you, but really we tend to agree too much. Oh, yes, I also like that. And you don't even like it, you know, but you don't want to offend. Or I don't know what is it that our insecurities.
I think when we're starting a new relationship, we go in with this idea that if we'll probably learn to love that thing that our partner loves or a new friend loves or our boss loves, we'll probably learn to like it, so we might as well say we like it right now, and then maybe we don't learn to like it, but because we started off with this expectation of me too, we had to sustain that over the course of the relationship. And we actually have a client who took a class and shared this story where she started dating someone. He asked her, do you like soccer? And she's like, oh yeah. She hates soccer. Yeah. She hates being at the matches. She hates the crowd. She hates the noise. She hates all of it. It's really stressful for her. But he's a big fan who goes all the time. Like every week or every other week, he goes to a soccer match. And she had to sustain that for years as they were married until finally the day comes where she cannot anymore. She can't handle it. She was like, you know what? I've been lying to you. I've been cheating you. And he's like, what do you mean you've been cheating me? I don't like soccer. And he's like, oh, the things he was imagining were obviously much worse. And it ended up not being a problem because in a relationship, whether it's personal or professional, we don't need to agree on every single thing. We don't need to be carbon copies of each other to get along. But that insecurity kicks in when we're just starting out and we don't really know them well. We don't know their opinions. We don't know how they react. Where we're like, let's be extra likable. Let's be extra in agreement with them. Let's be extra what I think they want me to be, just in case, just so they don't reject me. But what's the point of not being rejected if you end up having to sustain something that's difficult, that's stressful?
Well, the reality is you're rejecting yourself off the bat.
Yeah,
exactly.
And it's a delicate situation because in Develop Element we talk about personality theory, but not to put you in a box, not to limit you, not to define you. And we give you tools so that you can really step into any personality in any moment. And we also explore the fact that you really are a mix of all the different personality types, because really personality types are just a mix of personality traits that we all have to some degree, or that we all can execute on to some degree. However, the amount of effort different actions take can be very different. So
Yeah.
an extrovert can sometimes get exhausted trying to sit still all the time, being organized all the time, being like really relaxed. So to sustain a very introverted lifestyle can be a lot of effort. So yes, we want to adapt sometimes. We want to be generous. We want to be kind. We want to be empathetic, but we don't want to lose ourselves permanently.
Yeah.
Like we want to be efficient. And yes, like if something is important to your partner or to your colleague or in a meeting, we have to do something. I mean, sometimes we got to make sacrifices for the greater good. Sometimes we got to go through periods of discomfort for the greater good.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't want to say, oh no, just hold on to who you are and ignore everyone else's need. Don't like. We are social beings,
Yeah.
and there's diversity in this world, and we gotta respect that.
No, and if you can set that expectation of saying, hey, I don't like soccer, but if this is something that's important to you, I'm going to allow you to have that in your life. And once in a while, maybe I'll go to a game, but not every other weekend. And also, one thing that I struggle with a lot is that my personality can sort of ping pong between very introverted and very extroverted.
Yeah.
And I didn't know how to present myself in an honest way to people because, Kinder's up here. Because sometimes I'd be naturally more introverted. People would meet that side of me and then they would be shocked when I suddenly started showing extroverted sides or vice versa. And what I've learned is just saying it. Like if I'm not being it in the moment, start talking about it, saying like, yeah, you know, you see me this way, but other times I'm this other way.
Yeah.
And then people have the expectation. They know that that's something that might happen at some point. And then it doesn't come as a shock and a surprise of what happened to you. Like, what changed? Why are you like this now if you weren't like that before?
Yeah, and the other thing we can do occasionally is that we present the worst.
Yeah.
Because we say, oh, if you meet the worst of me, then if you love me that way, then you really, really love me.
Yeah.
How many tests sometimes, how often do we test people to see if they really love us, presenting the worst of us too?
Yeah, no, that's definitely not healthy either. If you're spending your time in the relationship testing the other person and making them prove that they really care about you, you're not actually having the relationship. You're not actually seeing how they would respond in a realistic setting because you're creating these false challenges for the other person. So you don't want to go to that extreme either. You don't want to go to the extreme of, I'm going to throw all my garbage on you and have you love me anyway, because that's probably not the be-all and end-all of who you are.
Exactly.
I mean, even if you have difficulties, even if you have traits that a lot of people have a hard time dealing with, that's not all that you are. So you want to show a more honest and diverse picture of who you are in different moments, how you'll respond in different moments, so that they have a realistic view. Because if they're just in a relationship with a test, that's not the best relationship.
No. And the secret is to ease into the relationship. Really find the easiest way for you, not trying to prove too much who you are or who you are not. Just be yourself and ease into that relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah, and one thing, like, in the beginning stages, one is always trying to impress the other person, right? So, and we all have the ability to impress someone. We all have the ability to dress a certain way, walk a certain way, invite someone to a certain place for dinner one time or two times. But there's also a question of, can you sustain that standard you set?
Yeah.
Because I know, for example, as an entrepreneur myself, I've had ups and downs. I have had periods where I've had lots of money, and I've had periods where things got very complicated, or where we've just invested a lot and taken a huge risk and really gotten dived into a big new project, and like
It never happens.
I've had moments where we make a bad investment, or we trust the wrong person, and I mean we've had ups and downs, right? And yeah, sure, sometimes I've gone through periods where, if you look at my socials, I'm traveling all over the world, I'm eating amazing food, I'm like where really you see a really high quality of life. I'm driving cool cars, this and that. But then I might hit a rough patch, right? And sometimes in entrepreneurship, that's the reality. And one of the things that also has been like a challenge for me has been like, okay, so people see my Instagram, they see I run a business with many different employees in many different languages, in many different countries. We obviously make money, but there's also, when it comes to business, there's a difference between like making revenue and making profit, because sometimes you're investing a lot of that revenue to grow. So you're investing into equipment, you're investing into marketing, you're investing into translation work, you're investing in a lot of things. So sometimes you don't have as much cash on hand as other times, right? So business is not that simple. I mean, if you look at Twitter, I don't think Twitter's even profitable to this day. They actually rely on investors to pay the bills, right? With the hope of one day being able to be profitable. I mean, that's a common practice with a lot of companies in Silicon Valley, that they start a new technology, they start a new product, they start something great, it looks super successful, but if you look at the finances, they're losing money. I'm pretty sure Uber probably is also in this similar boat where they're losing a lot of money. And that's what happens when you're scaling a business. Sometimes you're investing more than what you can generate fast enough, and sometimes you got to do a loss leader. Like when the Xbox came out, they sold it below cost to basically take up and steal market share from the likes of Nintendo and Sony with the PlayStation and such. And yes, they make money back on accessories and extras, but the reality is, a lot of people, they don't know those finer intricacies, and they just look, oh yeah, he's in Vegas right now, he's in Europe right now, oh, he's in Japan right now, oh, he's making a lot of money, he has an event that's making this amount of money because it has that amount of attendees and it costs this amount of money. Sure, but how much is the translations cost, how much did the travels cost, all these sort of things, right? So there's a difference between revenue and profit, right? And the reason why I'm giving this explanation is because how many of you have looked at someone who drives a cool car, dresses in designer clothes, and you make the assumption that that person is rich, but you might see another person who is very modestly dressed, and you think that person might be poor, and he might be rich. And I say this because we're very good at judging people by their covers, you know, like judge a book by its cover, and we're also very good at like just thinking that certain things are static or constant when they actually rarely are. Yeah. So that same person you're dating might have one period where they're doing very well financially, and might have a period where we're doing not so well financially. They might have a period where they're dressed super well, and then they might have a period where their clothes are breaking. They might have a period where they're emotionally very happy and super motivated, and they might have a period where they're depressed and anxious and really having a hard time. And the world and everyday life is so diverse, it's so mixed up, like there's so many factors going on at any given time. You might get good news or bad news. You might have an experience that regenerates you and fills you with energy, or an experience that drains you. The same person you might meet them at a high point where they're super regenerated, super happy, and a few months down the road, they might have a terrible experience with a family member or a colleague or a boss, and then they're super drained, and then a different side of the personality comes out. And the reason why I say it from this side of the story is really to give you the understanding that we have to be patient with people, and we also have to communicate more of our context than we might think is necessary, because you might assume things are obvious, but people don't know what's going on in your head. People don't know what's going on in your bank account. People don't know what's going on in your calendar. People don't know what's going on in your family. People don't know what's going on in your job. People don't know what's going on behind the scenes. They only see what you let them see. And if you only let them see what you think is very nice, and you don't let them see the real struggles, the real challenges, the reality of life, then it will be very easy to disappoint the other person, because you're not going to be able to sustain the constant happy-go-lucky, the constant, here, I'll pay for all these amazing meals and travels. And no, right? So if you set realistic expectations, like, yeah, they're going to be ups and downs. For dating me, you're going to have moments where I'm super happy, moments where I'm depressed, moments where I have good money, moments where I have not so good money, moments where there's this and moments where there's that. And if you can deal with the lows, I'm going to make sure that the highs are worth it. Like, it's really about sharing your context, sharing what's going on, because people aren't mind readers, and people, like, are very, very good at drawing conclusions without having all the facts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People are very, very good at filling the blanks. So if there's a blank that you don't provide them with that information, let me calculate how much money that person has based on their action. Let me calculate how much time that person has based on their actions.
Oh,
how
this
much
person
mental
reminds
clarity.
me of somebody else.
Yeah.
Therefore, it has the lips of the boyfriend I had in 5th grade. And it moves like my brother that I don't like. And you also associate certain things with certain people and expect them to be that way because of that.
Yeah.
And how often they also project their desires, their needs, their expectations onto you.
Yeah.
So the more clear you are about who you are and introduce yourself and present yourself the way you are, the easier it will be for them to start noticing. But I have noticed sometimes, even with close friends, that they say to me, "Oh, because you think this way," and I'm like, "What? Where did you get that idea?"
Yeah. No, I mean, we can't prevent people from ever making an assumption about us because it's human nature to make assumptions, to see a little bit of information and try and extrapolate what that means in a bigger picture. But we can still do our part in trying to paint a more realistic picture. I've seen so many times that people, they start presenting themselves a certain way. And I've been in relationships with people that do this too. They're like going along with everything I say and everything I do. And it seems like we're on the same page and it seems like we want the same things. And then like after a couple of months, suddenly the reality of the situation hits them and they realize, oh wait, this isn't the relationship I want.
Yeah.
And then they start turning it around like, no, you're the one that's been convincing me and you're the one that's been trying to make me do this. And I'm like, you seem very enthusiastic from the beginning, right? And so it hurts on both ends because the other person feels rejected for who they are because they weren't honest from the start about who they were.
Exactly.
And the other person also feels rejected because I thought you liked these things that I liked. I thought you wanted these things that I want. And now you're telling me that you don't. So you'll probably realize once you start to present yourself in a more honest way, yes, not everyone's going to like that. Not everyone's going to be like, oh, wow, this is everything I wanted. Because no, we're different people. We want different things. But at least in my experience, the rejection hurts less when it comes from the beginning and it comes from an honest place.
Absolutely.
Like if it's just a realization that, hey, okay, we're not compatible, it's very different from once you've invested yourself emotionally in a relationship and then you realize, oh wait, we're not compatible.
I will say I'll challenge that because I'm a fiery person. My personality will always take on a challenge. So if someone tells me, like, starts having doubts about compatibility and options of other things are possible, I'll be like, challenge accepted. So not everyone will see the situation the same way. And the sooner it happens, the more it's like, ooh, I have a challenge now. So be aware that
I don't have time
not
for that.
every I mean, as we say here in developed development, nothing is one size fits all and everyone has their own individual contexts and their own personalities and ways of being. But yeah, I mean, with me, I know every time I've had someone, especially in the early stages, trying to push away, it's like, wait a minute, let me show you that this is possible. I know exactly how we're going to do it. This is how we're going to find a middle ground. And usually, actually, I've done quite well in those situations. A lot of good experiences have come out of those because a lot of people, they have insecurities and will try to run away from good stuff.
Yeah.
And and reality, when I've kind of been like, no need to run, no need to give up yet. Like, things are good. Don't worry, I've got patience. I understand people. I'm very empathetic. I work with personal development. This is easy. Like, but people have a tendency to like push people away and try to
I never do that. I
destroy
don't know what you're
relationships
talking about.
because they're afraid of being happy or they're afraid of getting attached to someone and then losing them, and I mean many different things, right?
Yeah,
So
I mean, for me, it's losing myself because I love people and I love to give. So I'm very careful, extremely careful, because I don't want to lose myself. But what I have learned is that if I'm regenerated, if I really find gratitude for me, and I regenerate every single day, and I try to be nearly 100%, not always possible, it's easier for me to be vulnerable in a relationship.
Yeah.
It's easier for me to present myself and ease into the relationship.
Yeah.
No, when you're confident and when you're regenerated, you're your best version, more
Yeah.
resilient, you're more patient.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you also aren't as invested in every single outcome because you have the confidence that there are options. If something
Yeah.
fails,
Yes.
there are many options out there. But when you're drained, when you're insecure, when you're not so great, when you don't have enough mental clarity, you start forcing things. You start just kind of pushing and forcing and insisting instead of really building and communicating and connecting. And let me see if I had a train of thought that I lost a few moments ago because the conversation went in another very interesting direction. But we were talking about challenges. You were saying in the beginning. Yeah. So what I wanted to say, it's a kind of follow up to what my sister was saying. In the early stages, when you're defining the standards, right? And yes, you can conclude that it won't work, and before you're too invested, okay, let's cut it, and that's fair. And that there are situations where that's the most viable situation. There are other situations where people will try to sabotage the relationship because they're afraid of being happy and they're afraid of getting attached or losing themselves and blah blah blah. And that's where maybe you want to have a conversation. That's really what you want, because I can put up with this, I can deal with this. I can be patient. I understand you just, you have these traumas we all have, and it's normal. We are human, blah, blah, blah. And sometimes out of a healthy conversation where you see that someone is giving too much power to their insecurities rather than to their desires and their goals, then you can kind of get them back on track. And it can be really what is both best for both people or all the parties involved, because many times what happens is people are giving power to their fears. But if people are giving power to their real conscious awareness of the truth of the situation, then great. Just verify before you jump to conclusions.
Yeah.
But the other thing is, the reality is in the beginning stages is when you really have to set the realistic expectations. So what I do now, for example, in dating is I go, listen, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm in charge of several full-time employees, teams all over the world. I am constantly fixing problems for people. I'm constantly taking care of people. I'm constantly listening to people. I'm constantly on my phone. I mean, if you're going to be dating me, it's not going to be normal in terms of I'm going to fail you in many ways. I'm going to be picking up my phone in the most uncomfortable moments. Literally during sex, I might grab my phone and be like, oh, there's an emergency at work. Okay, we got to stop now. The reality is there's certain responsibilities I have. And then I just communicate that. Listen, if you can put up with me being responsible for a lot of people, me having my ups and downs, me being a workaholic, me having a huge sense of responsibility and being stressed a lot because of the huge sense of responsibility I feel for everyone in the company and etc., then great. If you expect me to, be able to disconnect fully from work, disconnect fully from that, then I'm not your guy.
Yeah.
And ever since I've shared that, it's been great. But before I shared that, in the early days of being an entrepreneur, there would be a lot of drama and jealousy and confusion as to why I was always maybe on my phone or always paying attention to other people or always, people felt like the girls I dated felt like maybe I was being unfaithful or something because I wasn't giving them the attention that they wanted. And really what it boiled down to was I have these responsibilities that I'm not willing to sacrifice for anyone because I will let more people down if I sacrifice this. And this is a decision I have made. If you accept that about me, then great. And the contrast before and after me being like that, me really setting the expectation straight, I'm going to fail you in this, I'm going to be inconsistent in this, there are going to be ups and downs in this, there are going to be moments where I can do this and moments where I can do this, but there are moments where I can't. Great. If you and it really was a big difference in my before I set realistic expectations. My relationships were full of abuse, drama, jealousy, manipulation, a lot of negative things. The moment I started just being honest, this is who I am, take it or leave it. I'm going to do my best, but understand that I have all these responsibilities. You can accept that, great. Ever since I started doing that, my relationships have been so much easier, so much more rewarding and just with less drama and less conflict. Because I just set the things straight from the beginning. This is who I am. These are my responsibilities. These are the inconsistencies. This is what's going to happen. You accept that, great.
Yeah.
But that requires confidence. That requires knowing
Yeah.
your value.
No,
Okay, please.
What was I gonna say? It's important to bring this up because a lot of the things that you've probably been judged for, rejected for in the past, by presenting them in a different way, you'll probably experience a different response.
Exactly.
Because exactly, like, yeah, if you're dating someone and you don't know why, but they're always on their phone, they're always busy, they're always maybe they have to cancel things last minute or interrupt special moments, things like that, then yeah, if you don't know what's going on, it can be really confusing and hurtful. But if you know, oh, it's because he's so dedicated to his job, he's so dedicated to what he's doing, he's so passionate about what he's doing, then you have a different context and a different way of understanding what the other person is doing. So it's really a matter of giving people context before you're suddenly in this situation that could get...
It literally flips something that can be perceived as negative to something positive because you sell your actions, you explain them, you contextualize things.
Yeah.
And people, like, and with me, exactly what you said. Some of the actions that before were like, oh, here he goes again, or no, and like, here, I'm going to distract you with this drama, this conflict, or this blah, blah, blah. Here, leave your work, like distraction. That was how my relationships were before. But then after contextualizing things, now it's like, no, go do your thing. You got this. Like, it's like more about like, I'm so happy that you're so dedicated. I'm so proud of you. I'm so this, I'm so that. In all the relationships I've had after he started saying that, it's been, instead of complaining about my actions, cheering me on and supporting me and how can I help? Like, and it's just been a night and day difference. And it really comes down to exactly giving the context, explaining why you do what you do, because people don't understand. If they've never spent time with someone or dated someone or worked with someone that works the way you do or does what you do the way you do it, they're going to be confused.
Yeah.
It's the same with colleagues. If someone works a certain way, if someone needs to be more introvert and reclusive, needs a different workflow, if you've never been educated on that way of doing things or experienced someone doing it that way, you might think they're lazy. You might think they're being distracted. You might think they're not doing work. It all comes down to explaining, look, I might look like I'm not working, but I'm actually doing this and doing this and doing this. Explain your context, your situation, your processes, your goals. Communicate. Over-communicate. Like, just learn to over-communicate.
Yeah. At the same time, don't explain too much why or try to justify your actions.
No, give context.
Give context, not justifications. And let me give you an example. Years ago, like 30 years ago, no more, like 35 years ago, I moved to London. I had been to American schools. I used to have a more American accent than I have now, actually. And I arrived to London. I was working in a very stressful job, and I really had a mental breakdown. So I saw a job for a receptionist in a construction company, very close to where I live. And I just needed a job. I like to work. So I thought I'll leave the other work because it was super stressful. And I just will take this job for a little while just to clear my head and have a more easy job. And I went and applied. And they offered me the job to my surprise. And I was like, but you hear that I don't speak perfect English? And they said, yeah, it's fine. And before I take in the job, I said, well, maybe you should do some tests because maybe I'm not as good as for the job. And they were, then why did you apply for it? And so anyway, I had to type in a typewriter. In those days, there were typewriters. And the problem is I had never learned construction words. Yeah. I mean, I never had to communicate those words. So there were a lot of words I couldn't spell. I didn't even understand. So when I would take dictation, I could not understand. So within 2 or 3 days from working, I had to sort of ask my bosses and my colleagues, please, I need to talk to all of you. And I said, I'm having problems understanding what you're saying. I don't understand the words and whatever. But there's these other things that I notice in the office that I can do. And so I was because I was so weak at my job. I mean, literally, they will call me and I couldn't even understand what they were saying. So I said, listen, this is what I can do for you, because at the time, computers were starting. I knew how to program. The typewriter, I could program. So I said, okay, I have noticed that, for example, this person, the letters they use are this, this, and this. And all the letters that I'm supposed to type look like this. So I have made sort of like a little sample of the letters he sends. So just fill in the blanks. Please write with your own handwriting the words that need to be said. And just tell me what to do and I'll do it. And it was so amazing because they were able to understand how I function, how my brain functions. They really liked what I could offer extra, and I ended being promoted and promoted and promoted and promoted in that job. If I had battled and tried to do what I couldn't do, I would have ended even more sick at the time. But I was able to present them with some possibilities they had never seen. My brain was able to work in certain things where I was more peaceful, where I didn't have to answer the phones and be under the pressure of doing something I did not know how to do. And because I found a way, eventually I was able to do quite a lot of the job I was hired for, but for some weeks or maybe a month and a half, they had to answer the phones because I couldn't even do that properly. Till I learned the words, till I learned how the system worked, what they were doing. I didn't even know what they were doing. They were fixing one of the subway stations, and I didn't even know. So I had to go to the construction. They had to explain me. So we took time, but out of desperation, I had to find what was valuable about me. So it's not always about confidence, because in that moment I did not feel confident. I was in the middle of a mental breakdown.
I think something like, sometimes you lack confidence, but when it comes to those situations where you're trying to find compatibility, I can share it from here at the office. We have several employees, speak different languages, have different experiences. They've all started off with maybe one area of focus, and many of them have ended up in totally different roles, very different positions, and what they really were signed on for. And yes, many of those people actually were confused as to why they were hired in the first place, what value they provided, because I tend to hire people based on more their character, their values, their ethics, their goals, their work ethic, than really their experience and the resume. Because I don't really care where you came from. I care about where you're going. And I've hired people from that really weren't on paper anywhere close to prepared for the jobs that I've given them. And without training, without anything, I know with many of them, it was for a period they felt so why did they give me this job? Am I a charity case or what? Why me? And I had to explain them first their value in terms of what I saw in them and all their contributions that they weren't acknowledging because of they were valuing them and comparing themselves to certain standards that they couldn't meet, but there were all these other things that they were exceeding in.
Exactly.
And that's where it was we took the time and it was so, okay, explore this, try editing a video. These are the steps, here's the program, these are the basic steps, here's how you do a basic edit. Try editing an image. Here's where you move, you drag, you move, you do this, you resize this, change the color here. Try editing this manual, see if you can find some grammatical mistakes, whether you can make it more pretty, whether you can format it here in Word, put some pictures in, make sure they're royalty free, this and that, blah, blah, blah. And the funny thing is they started thanking me. Thank you for the opportunity for exploring and learning something new. I didn't know I had this capacity. I didn't know I was going to be good at this. I really didn't think I would be. And out of that, by taking the time to understand, where is the fit? Great. Obviously, I didn't have any specific expectations, and they hadn't set any specific expectations. It was more of a, I have a plan for you. Here, join the project. We'll find a fit, right? And because we didn't set very concrete expectations in the beginning, it gave us that opportunity to go through an exploration process of figuring out what is the fit, what is each person's area of, strength or interest or passion, and how can we support each member of the team. And it was absolutely great. But yes, there have been mistakes made along the way where certain individuals overpromised certain things and underdelivered and said they could do something that they really couldn't, but they really wanted to, and they had good intentions and they really meant well, but it really wasn't the right situation for them. And yes, it has led to frustrations and breakdowns in communication at times, but every time we've sat down and tried to understand what are the frustrations, what are the challenges, how can we help you do your job better, what support do you need? Okay, so these are the issues, these are the things that are maybe draining you or stressing you, or okay, let's work on that. Okay, let's get together, and then we get back on track. And these are the conversations with any type of relationship. It's not just about setting expectations in the beginning, because sometimes we're overly ambitious. Or sometimes we're overly harsh on ourselves. So I've had people join the company say, I'll never do this. I'll never do public speaking. I'll never do video editing. I'll never do the image editing. I'll never do this. And then later, all of a sudden, they're doing public speaking, or they're editing videos, or they're editing images. I've had people say, no, I'm not good at that. He's the good one. And then when they try, they actually turn out even being better. So I've had people set those low expectations and delivering, and I've had on the flip side people being overly ambitious. Oh, I can do this, and we set a very ambitious plan and a very rigorous schedule, and we can sustain it for 1 or 2 weeks, and then things break down. It's but out of each moment, we've been so what's working, what's not? We've gotten better. This is working, this is not working, and that's where expectation setting needs to be a continuous thing. It cannot just be start off this expectation and everyone is gonna fail at meeting expectations and everyone is gonna exceed expectations. It depends on which expectations we're talking about. Expectations need to be constantly reevaluated, constantly discussed. What is it that you can provide? What is it that you're having a hard time meeting? How can we help you? How do we do this collaboratively? What do you want to do more yourself that take responsibility of, ownership of? What things you want to do more in a team? Let's talk about it. And the same in relationships. Every now and then, every month, every 2 months, every week, every night, just whatever it is, talk about what's working, what's not with pointing fingers of you're this. No, it's okay, this, how can we optimize this, and how I said I was going to be able to do this? I'm having a really hard time. Can we find another way to achieve the same thing? Or can I ask for a little bit of help here? Or maybe I help more with this and take this off your plate, and then maybe you can help a little bit here because this is really draining for me, this is very difficult for me, and I know this other thing is very draining for you, so maybe I can help you with this, and then you can help me more with this. Having those conversations constantly are key. It's not just in the beginning, but the beginning is key because it will save you from a lot of headaches down the road if you have the right conversations in the beginning.
Yeah, and it's actually very interesting also when you are already in a relationship, how often we forget to ask new questions, to see how the relationship is going, to see if the person has changed their taste. I was recently in an outing with a very close friend of mine, and he was with his family. And they would mention things, and he will turn around and say, oh, but I don't like that anymore. Oh, but that's not relevant for me any longer. And the parents hadn't seen him in several months. And they live in different parts of the country. So it's not although they talk nearly every day, there was some information that was missing. And it was super interesting for me to see it, because I remember when I lived in Europe and I would come to Mexico and see my parents. Even if we also talked constantly, they had not been updated in certain changes in the context. And they would have the food that I liked last time and the clothes I wanted last time. And it was the same with the children, right?
Yeah, and that's the thing that happens. And we want to not judge people for that, because we have to understand, if they don't get an update on the context, they're doing the best they can with the information that they have. But it is important when we're in relationships to check in once in a while and see, okay, where are we at? How are things going? And I think a mistake a lot of us make in relationships is having the expectation before we've even met the person of, this is the relationship I want, this is the dynamic I want, this is the kind of life that I want. I just need to plug someone into that. And so you're evaluating people based on whether you can plug them into that. And it doesn't work that way, because even if they look like they're going to be everything you wanted them to be, something somewhere along the way is going to be different from what you imagined. But if you allow yourself the process of discovery of, hey, I met a new person, I have no idea what this is going to be, I have no idea what kind of relationship we're going to have, let's find out, then you don't have that pressure and that weight of they have to live up to this, because you have the possibilities, endless possibilities of, it could be this, it could be this, it could be this. You know, maybe somebody that you started off dating turns out to be your best friend and you don't date, but they turn out to be a really good friend. And if you don't have that heavy expectation from the beginning of, I need a partner that I can commit to for the rest of my life, and it has to look like this, and it has to happen before this date, etc., then you have the opportunity and the flexibility of seeing, oh, wait, okay, maybe we're not a match romantically, but as friends we are.
I mean, somebody is now in the control on the controls here for the program. He started working for me as my cook, my chef, because I travel so much. When I come home, sometimes there's nothing in the fridge. So I have a chef that brings me the food already prepared. Nothing goes wrong in my refrigerator. And he started like that. Then he was my personal assistant, but he didn't like to be called personal assistant. And I didn't know how to call him, because he's able to do a lot of things. But he didn't like the title. He was very uncomfortable with that, but he was a very good personal assistant. And so he ended coming here to the office and working on all kind of things. And now he doesn't speak English. He's starting to learn English. And he's doing the controls now for the program, because
he's
Steve
on
is
comms, he edits videos, he does images, he does all kinds of tech stuff. Camera stuff, like filming, like
he's kind of the Swiss Army knife in the office. He can do a little bit of everything, so wherever we need him, we're like, David.
And it's very funny because he's an excellent chef. So if I had kept him in the box of excellent chef, or as an assistant, he was wonderful too. If I had tried to keep him there, control, we would have missed a lot of other possibilities. And this is an example I give you because it happens the same with the relationships. Now I work with my children, and people sometimes find it a little freaky that we live together, we see each other, and we actually like each other. So we spend a lot of time together. And people think, she's overly attached to her children. She doesn't allow them to fly, you know. And I've had a lot of people saying that. And it's so funny because actually
a little piece of context. She moved to Japan. I moved to Vancouver. We were all living in different places, and this project brought us together, and also some family health issues with grandparents. But I mean, the context brought us together. It's not because
it's not that we've never had separate projects,
or that we haven't been empowered or encouraged to fly from the nest. So we've flown from the nest. In fact, they came back to the nest I was creating my own little nest over here, and then everyone was like, oh yeah, we're joining.
No, you invited us.
Okay,
he invited us. He was like, hey, you want to be more involved?
And I was the last one to come. It's a lift, everything in Japan, even furniture, clothes, everything to come.
I may or may not have recruited them and really encouraged them to come, but just giving the context, we were all living in different countries, cities, and we all had choices and options. And then we may or may not have chosen to be like, let's collaborate, let's work together.
No, and it's really funny because we get the flip side of that of shouldn't you be more independent? I think you're ready to leave the nest. I think you don't need your mom anymore. I'm like, I know I don't need my mom, but I like her.
No, and like that's one of the things we say in Develop the Element. Like, with personal development, we always share this example of our mission is to become obsolete, that you don't depend on us, but we hope to create such a good experience, provide such a good service that you choose to come back every now and then and spend time with us and explore different things with us, but not because you depend on us. And that's the same thing with parents. Like, as a parent, your responsibility is to prepare your kids to go out in the world, conquer the world, be independent, have the confidence, the skill sets to really pursue what they want in life. But yes, you hope to create such a good experience that there's going to be some communication, some connection, some opportunities to spend time together. Not out of necessity of, hey, come save me, or hey, I can't function on my own. No, like, I want to spend time with you. I want to hang out with you. Like, that's really what and with that requires a little bit of confidence. And what my mother was getting at, which also ties into this example, is sometimes we need to have the confidence to let people fly the nest or reevaluate a situation, or really be critical of a situation that maybe this isn't working, or maybe there's a better approach. And by being willing to have those conversations, many times what actually happens is you end up having a stronger relationship, a stronger situation. I've had relationships that have been at the point of breakdown, and then by having a very serious conversation, but a very open, expressive conversation, sharing each other's context, understanding each other, instead of blame game, instead of you're wrong, you're this, you're that. No, this is what I'm going through, this is my needs, this is my thought process, so these are your needs, these are your thought process. How do we connect? What's the middle point? Those conversations can really take something from toxic to very nurturing. Also, in the office, I've had periods where things have been toxic, difficult, people's insecurities have dominated, and then all of a sudden we have those conversations of what's working, what's not, what's going on, and then by having them, all of a sudden, it's this very simple fix, great, and then all of a sudden everyone is happy. But sometimes we avoid conversations that are difficult, and we let the problem grow. There's a big elephant in the room. It can be purple, shiny, like full of color and bright lights and neon lights, and everyone's like, nope, there's no elephant in the room. And it just keeps growing and it's feeding, and it's just like, and sometimes just taking the time is like, okay, what's going on? That can get things back on track. And when it comes to setting expectations, we're going to let people down. We're going to fail people, but we're going to fail them way more if we don't take the time of sharing what we're going through. If we don't take the time to explain why we're doing what we're doing. If we don't take the time to share our context, things are going to get worse. And if we take the time to share our context, things get better. And if we take the time to try to understand the other person's context, things get even better. And when we try to take time to understand why are the contexts different, and where's the middle ground, and where are the differences, and how can we get more middle ground.
And sometimes get the definitions out, because, for example, with the example of David, when he had just the definition, he's the chef, or he's the private assistant, or he's this or that, it didn't give him so much wiggle room. When we took the definition out, we have no idea what he is. He can do everything because he's brilliant. So he can do everything.
I think a better word than definition is be careful with titles and job descriptions.
And expectations. But also with the children. I mean, I learn more from you, and I feel I'm more supported often by you than what I sometimes support you, but maybe because it's easy for me to do what I do for you, But
keep feeling that way. You owe us so much. Keep feeling that way.
I don't feel I owe you much.
You keep feeling that way. I won't correct you there. There may be an alternate truth or an alternate reality, but
No, but yeah, whatever words we put to it, it's a good point. Like, we have to look at how we're defining or what limits we're putting on a title or relationship, because exactly, like, there might be opportunities for things to show up that we never really imagined, that we never really expected, that we only get to if we're willing to explore them. And if we have it so fixed that this is what it is, even if it's good, as you said, like, when he's an amazing cook. So even if it's something that's good, if you have it so fixed that, that's what it is, that's all it can be, that's all it'll ever be, that's where you start robbing yourself and the other person of a lot of great opportunities.
No, and also when it comes to relationship dynamics, if we talk about romantic relationships, how many times have you tried to create a relationship dynamic based on cultural expectations, judgments, your parents' dreams, what you see in the movies and whatever? And maybe that's not what works for you.
Yeah.
It works for a lot of people, but maybe that's not what works for you. And for example, I've noticed that ever since I take the time to share, these things that are traditionally expected in relationships are a little bit more difficult for me. These things are easy. I can exceed those. No problem. I've got that. And these are my insecurities. These are the things that really make me uncomfortable. Just taking that time, it's like, wow. And you'll be surprised how many people are open to explore other possibilities, and how much you don't have to fit in those little boxes. In the last few years, my relationships have been much less formal, but much deeper.
Exactly.
With all the love, the affection, the support, the communication, the trust, the loyalty, all that stuff. But without putting so many labels and trying to, make this picturesque situation, just by enjoying each other's company, being there for each other, really being natural about things and not trying to squeeze things in a box or define things. Things have been so much easier for me. And there are people that want the more traditional stuff, and that's beautiful. There are many people who want that and will give you that. But if you feel trapped in relationship, if you feel controlled in relationship, know that there are people who have the confidence, the communication skills, the abilities to have a relationship with you where things are less tense, where things are more natural, where you're empowered to do what you want, how you want, there's options out there.
Yeah.
And in some countries, in some cultures, it can be more difficult to find than others. And I understand that, but in every culture, there's someone that has your way of thinking. So also don't, out of insecurities, try to force a relationship that's not working. Don't force it to work, because, you're just draining yourself trying to fit into expectations you just cannot meet.
Yeah. No, and something I sometimes say when we talk about things like boxes and labels and relationship dynamics is that there's a very big difference between when that thing feels like home and when it feels like a box. Because if we look at most of our homes, technically they're some sort of a box.
Yeah.
But if they're comfortable, if they're a place that we can come to and relax in, it's a very different situation than if it's a place we feel tense and trapped in. So yes, there are going to be words that you'll use to communicate things, and there are going to be certain dynamics and structures that get created in your relationships and in your life. But look at, okay, does it feel like home or not? Does it feel like I can relax into it? Does it feel like it's comfortable? Does it feel like I can be myself with this or not? And that's where you'll start finding the distinction between a box or a label that doesn't fit and one that does.
And I think if you find yourself that in a relationship, in a job, somewhere where you don't feel at home, you don't have ease, first find how to regenerate and find how to communicate it in a mature way. And the best way to have mature communications is first being regenerated, then also being willing to listen actively to what the other person is saying. Because that is key. Sometimes we want to communicate our context, and it's more like, I'm going to force my context on you, and it's not a dialogue, it's not a mature dialogue. You really want to have a generosity of spirit without losing yourself, gratitude for the other person, the job, whatever, and then mature communication.
Going towards that, also don't prematurely burn bridges, because you might see someone you care about really start to do toxic, destructive, negative things, and it can be very easy to get upset and angry and judge them and criticize them, but they're doing those things for a reason. They're escaping from something. They are using it as a coping mechanism for reality that they that they can't face. They are seeking approval, maybe from the wrong crowds, because they're not getting enough approval or love or and affection in a way that they can understand, receive, and reciprocate at home. There are many different things that happen. I mean, obviously, we've talked in this program. I mean, most bullies, they have conflict homes, and having empathy and patience and not going straight to judgment. I mean, it's not that it's wrong to judge certain actions, because obviously there are some actions that are outright bad, but don't assess that the person is only that. Because I've met all kinds of amazing people who have very rough pasts, who have had very rough patches, who've made so many mistakes. And because I haven't given up on them, and I've been patient with them, and I've kind of been there to regenerate them, to make them feel confident, to help them out through that process, all of a sudden they have been able to turn their life around and suddenly be a huge contribution to me as a person, in friendship dynamic, as colleagues. I mean, most people have pasts that they're not proud of. But the more that they feel that they're not judged, the more they're going to share their context too. I've met a lot of people who feel that they're bad people, or that they destroy everything, every relationship they touch, or that they're like toxic or this or that really are in many ways the opposite of that, but that are so afraid of sharing the context because they've been judged so much, criticized so much by other people who are insecure or who lack empathy or have very strict ways of seeing things. But when I've actually heard the stories from a lot of these people, all of a sudden it's like, you think that's being a bad person? You think that's wrong? No, like, yeah, sure, you're drained, insecure. Maybe you had a miscommunication. Maybe you did some stupid things when you were younger, but like, that's small. Like, that's nothing. That's no big deal. And if you can communicate to someone that, oh, it's no big deal, you can talk to me about anything, and I won't judge you and I won't snap at you right away, then there's going to be so much more communication. But if they think every time they share anything with you, you're going to criticize them, you're going to judge them, you're going to shut them down, then they're going to start lying to you. They're going to start like trying to be what they think you're going to accept, but they're not going to be genuine with you. And then it's not going to be a good relationship, and there will be a deterioration of relationships. I see a lot here in Latin America where there's, all these keeping up with appearances and all these cultural guidelines, and people are judged a lot by their actions if they don't fall in line with certain societal and cultural expectations. And everyone breaks the rules, almost everyone. But they just learn to lie in their home.
Yeah.
And also parents, they know that their kids are lying, and they're almost okay with it because they prefer the kids lying, because they feel it's like, okay, the less I know, the better. The more you keep up this appearance, the better. And like, the less I know, the better. And it's like, no, that's not how it works. Talk about things. Be open about things. Just like we're all natural here. We're all human beings. We all have our needs, our instincts, we all make mistakes. We all have our insecurities. We all mess up. We all like get into conflicts. We all have issues. Let's talk about it. And the more you can create a dynamic where let's talk about it, the better. And when it comes to setting realistic expectations, if you want to be able to set realistic expectations that go both ways, yes, one is sharing your context, but one is creating an ambience and atmosphere, a sense of feeling that that other person or that group of people, they can be themselves, they can express themselves without being attacked.
Yeah.
Because most people in the world have been criticized, have been attacked, have been shut down, and then they learn to just not share things.
Yeah.
So that's where you really gotta challenge yourself and ask yourself, how much are you invalidating other people? How much are you shutting people down? How much are you really not being empathetic? How much are you not understanding people because they have a different context than you? How much are you reinforcing your parents' ways of doing things, or your grandparents' ways of doing things that may not have been as educated? Well meant, yes, but I mean, the world is evolving. And be like, go through a self-reflective process, because I think you'll be surprised of how many times you shut down people and you shut down the means of communication by instantly going to judgment, instantly going to an attack. And you probably hate when people do it to you, but you might not even notice that you're doing the same thing.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's something that is worth looking at when there are things that frustrate you about other people and relationships. Do look at whether you're doing the same thing to other people, because it happens a lot. And it can be little things, it can be big things. I mean, I used to have a frustration when people didn't communicate what was going on and weren't, you know, upfront about certain things and weren't direct about certain things. And then I realized I'm not doing that either. You know, I'm not communicating either. And I realized, how do I expect them to know that this is what I want in a relationship if I'm not presenting it? So do look at, am I doing all these things?
Yeah, where am I doing this? If it's bothering me so much, could it be that I'm doing it myself?
Yeah, sometimes it bothers us because we do that, and because that causes us problems, and because we don't like that about ourselves, so we don't like it in other people. But it's so easy to just focus on, oh, the other person is wrong. So using that opportunity to reflect on ourselves, am I doing this too? And not to judge yourself, not to beat yourself up over it, but just to have the information, because if you're aware of it, then you can do something about it.
Yeah, and I see it sometimes when we have grown up being criticized for what we are. And I mentioned that my mother didn't like the earthly people, and I am earthly.
For context, my grandmother didn't have the context of the elements, but the character traits that we associate with earthly people, she would constantly criticize because her instincts were polar opposite. And she would try to be efficient, get things done fast, go, and couldn't understand how earthly people could slow down and really try to understand every single variable and make sure that every single person is happy. And like all those sort of things, she felt like they slowed down progress. So with my mother, she would always feel that that part of her was wrong. Up until it developed your element, it was like, oh, it's not wrong. It can be perceived as wrong, and it can be negative in certain moments. But it's not necessarily outright wrong. It can be good or bad depending on how we direct it. And that's something that most of us here have experienced, being criticized a lot by people with another personality, another way of being. And sometimes rightfully so, because sometimes when we're drained and insecure, we use a personality in a not so nice way, in a not so productive way, and it can cause problems, but it doesn't define us.
Yeah, and the thing is, I learned those things were bad. So when I would see other people doing what is natural for me, I would criticize it, thinking it was wrong. And it was on. Eventually, I learned that it wasn't so bad, and because I actually prefer people that are more quiet and slower in their thought process. And with your element, I've noticed that a lot of us do that. We criticize others for things that have been somebody has criticized about us. So we are extra tough on people that present those things, and especially if they are enjoying it.
Like a sense of envy kicks in of like, hey, I wasn't allowed to be that way. I wasn't allowed to do that, so you can't do it. It's wrong if you do it. And yeah, we've seen that a lot in. One example that I think is very easy to notice is very extroverted people who have been told all their lives, no, sit still, be quiet, don't do this, don't touch that, don't. When they see other people being extroverted, moving a lot, adventuring, and having fun, that feeling is out of like, I want to do that and I want to be that because I'm like that, but I've never been allowed, can result in them projecting onto the other person, no, don't do that, sit still, be quiet, don't do this.
And we've seen it all over the world. It happens all over the world, that people are like, or metallics, the very structured people that been told not to be so structured. When they see somebody even more structured, they go, he's so structured. So be aware too that sometimes that thing that irritates you on other people is something that you're doing, and maybe you were not allowed to do it, or you're doing it in a trained way and don't even notice it.
Yeah. Okay, moving on a little bit, taking this conversation in a different direction a bit. Just to implement a little bit more personality theory. I want to reinforce something that we talk a lot in many other episodes, that depending on our personality type, we have certain instincts, we have certain needs. Extroverts need to have more friends, they need to socialize more, they need to go out more, they need more adventure. They might need more adrenaline rushes. Like, obviously depends on the individual and their context and their exact elements. But like, for example, electric types, they need constant adventure, constant change. They can't sit still. Like, they really need constant change. If you are an airy person and you want lots of personal space, you don't want too much social stimulus, you're more introverted, you're more tranquil. If you have a relationship with an electric person, you have to understand there are going to be moments where you have to step out of your comfort zone and join for adventures. But that also means that the extroverts every now and then will have to be able to adapt to a slow night, a movie night, something relaxing. And yes, every now and then regenerate each other so that the other person is ready for what the other person needs. An airy person might need to be told weeks in advance if they're expected to join a party or a social event. An electric person, within 5 minutes, do you want to join this adventure? Do you want to go to this party? Great. So understand, when we're talking about setting expectations, we have to take into account personality psychology, because an airy person has to take the time to explain to an electric person, give me time to prepare myself mentally, recharge my social battery, to have the social battery to be able to join you in that event. That is part of setting expectations. An electric person has to take the time and be like, listen, I am an extrovert. I need high social stimulus. I'm going to be going out a lot, having lots of friends. You're invited to join if you want. There's no pressure. You don't have to attend every single thing. But this is a basic need I have, so I need you to understand that part of me. We all have different needs. Aquatic types are very emotionally...
Fire. Let's go in order.
Okay, sure. So fiery types, they need to be very productive. They need to feel status. They need to feel admired. They need to feel celebrated. They will seek attention and respect from other people, not just you. They're going to seek validation from other people, not just you. They're going to be working like crazy. They're going to be working even during moments where they're not supposed to be working. I am very fiery, so I might be on a date. I might be during dinner. I might literally be having sex and be thinking of what am I working on? How am I going to solve this problem? Fiery people are very productivity focused, results driven. So understand that. But a fiery person has to explain that to a person who doesn't have that same reality, who doesn't have that same instinct. So they have to explain to other people with other personalities, this is a very basic, strong need of mine. Please respect it. That's part of setting expectations. It's not normal for every person to be like that. We all have different ways of being. Aquatic types, they need to feel a very deep connection with everyone. They need to express themselves and pour out their heart and really be emotional and connected with their feelings. And when it comes to gift giving, they need, it's the story that matters more, the little card that matters more than the gift itself. It's you know, there are so many ways of everything that aquatic people do is so personalized. It's so detail oriented. It's so focused on that human connection that an aquatic person will need more constant affection and love and expressions of gratitude, expressions of affection. You know, there needs to be more emotions involved in the conversations. An aquatic person has to take the time to explain that logically to people who are less expressive, and also manage their own expectations, because we all the types have to manage their expectations and be patient and empathetic with other people, but they also have to explain their basic needs. So an aquatic type has to explain in the way that another element can understand. I have these basic instincts and these basic needs. I understand it's not as natural for you, but if you can sometimes take the time to and make the effort, I will appreciate it if you can be more vulnerable, more expressive, more this, more that. But not force it. Don't be like, you're wrong, you're cold, you're this, you're that. No, just like, if you can maybe take your time out of your day to send me a few messages, just so that I know you're thinking about me, so that I know that we're connected, or whatever. Take the time to have that conversation, instead of being like, you don't love me, you don't care about me, like you've forgotten about me, what are you doing, where are you? No, just explain. One message every now and then, one little voice note, whatever it is that you need. If you can do it for me, and yes, manage your expectations, both in how it's done and the frequency, But if you take the time to explain why, it'll be much more impactful. Earthly types are going to be so focused on making sure there's consensus, harmony, that everyone feels that they're included, the ethics, morals, values. Earthly people really want to do good and want people to be happy, and they want that harmony. They don't want conflict. So they're going to slow down things to make sure that everyone is happy. A parent is going to make sure that all their kids get what they want and that no one is felt left out if they're going to plan a family trip. A boss is going to make sure that everyone in the room is heard and included. And that can slow down progress, but understand that it's a basic need for them. So an earthly person has to take the time to explain, I, as an earthly person, have an ethical and a strong instinct and obligation to make sure that everyone is taken into consideration, is included. This is very important for me. I will require more patience sometimes because I'll be a little slower at making certain decisions. And yes, you can help me speed up the decision, but don't force a decision if I'm having some uncertainty, because I will not be able to enjoy any situation or any decision if I feel strongly that someone or some group of people are not happy. So let me try to create win-win situations. Airy people, they don't respond well to pressure. They don't respond well to urgency. They don't respond well to super high social stimulus environments. They have to take the time to explain, listen, I can follow through with these obligations, these responsibilities, but if you pressure me too much, I'm going to shut down and get overwhelmed. If there's too much urgency, I might panic and feel like I don't have all the pieces to the puzzle and that I might mess up and I will get distracted. If there's too much noise, too much chaos, too much social stimulus, my mind will be focused on everything that's going on. It's very hard for me to disconnect from that. So I need to be able to lower that social stimulus somehow, whether it be with noise-canceling headphones at work or a cubicle or being able to go out for a walk or disconnect or whatever. But I have these basic needs that I need to lower stimulus every now and then so that I can recharge my social battery, so I can focus and that I cannot be so overwhelmed by all this. A metallic type has the need of being precise, exact, logical, structured, doing things the correct way based on their assessments.
Unpredictability.
They need predictability. They need to know how their day looks. Every day they need to have a certain idea of how things are going to happen. And they need to take the time to explain to other people who might be more impulsive, who may be more flexible and agile. For me, that really stresses me out. I really need to understand the basic plans. I can be flexible if I have some basic level of structure and organization, but if it's all chaotic, I mean, I can't function like that. So please, if you can take the time to give me a basic understanding of the basic expectations, the plan, the structure, the timeline, then it'll be easier. And also take the time to explain, listen, I'm a person who values logic, fact, precision over almost all else. These are things that are for me, it's a disfavor to you if I sugarcoat things. I want to be able to be direct with you without feeling like I'm stepping on glass. So I have to be able to say things without you getting offended, without you getting hurt, because for me, I need to be able to be direct. And yes, sometimes I'm going to tell you things you don't like to hear, but that's how I function. So every personality has to take the time to have those conversations, and by having those conversations, the expectations also, this person functions like that. It's not that they're wrong or that they're bad. It's their basic instinct and their basic need. I can respect it now. But if you don't take the time to explain that, you have a metallic person and an aquatic person. The metallic person is going to seem like the most cold person in the world and black and white person in the world. And the aquatic person is going to seem like the most emotionally dramatic person in the world. And they're going to speak two totally different languages. But if they take the time to share their context, explain their needs, explain their instincts, explain their way of functioning, boom, suddenly there's understanding. That's your way of communicating. That's that person's way of communicating. Okay, we're saying the same thing but different ways many times, not always. Okay, we have different instincts. How can we solve this? But we have to have these conversations. If we don't have them, we're constantly going to get annoyed by people who do things differently. And I mean, we all can have our patience tested, and yes, when we're regenerated, when we're confident, we're more patient, we're more empathetic, we're more understanding. But it's not just regenerate and work on your insecurities. It's also context. Understand, seek context, share your context, understand people, express yourself, and then things get much easier.
Yeah.
Yeah. I went on a little rant there, but it was an important one.
No, it is a very important one, because when we're talking about this, you know, setting expectations, sometimes there are things that are just so obvious to us that we don't realize that they might not be obvious to the other person. And when we're looking at our personality and our basic function, our motivators, our way of expressing ourselves, that's one of those things that can be so obvious to us and so natural to us that we just kind of assume that other people should understand, or other people probably must feel the same way.
Yeah.
And that's happened to me a lot when I've been in, you know, I'm primarily airy, and I've dated a lot of aquatic people. And my experience dating aquatic people has been night and day between when I understood and when I didn't understand. Because when I didn't understand, my perspective was, I'm with you because I care about you, because I love you. I don't need to tell you that all the time for it to be true. Whereas the other person wanted that affection. They wanted those little sweet messages, and hey, I'm thinking of you, and hey, I saw this and it reminded me of you. And I actually enjoy all of those things too, but I don't have the same intensity of need for that, or the same instinctive drive to be doing that very frequently. And once I understood that it's not that they don't believe me, that they don't trust me, that they think I'm a cold-hearted person, but really just that they really enjoy those moments of sharing these little details of, hey, I'm thinking of you, and hey, this reminded me of, then suddenly it turns into something that's much easier for me to do, because it's not coming from a place of, oh, I'm wrong and I'm cold, and eventually they'll find out, so the relationship won't work no matter what I do. It's coming from a place of, oh, this is a sweet thing that I can do to show that I care about them, to, you know, spend time with them, to share something with them that makes them happy.
Exactly.
The shift focuses, and suddenly it's not a stressful thing.
Yeah, the moment you understand each person's individual needs, context, instincts, experiences, traumas, all that sort of stuff, so much easier.
Yeah.
So much easier to be patient, so much easier to collaborate, so much easier to connect, so much easier to define expectations, mutual expectations, and really just kind of enjoy each other's company. Things become so much easier, so much easier. But it's a process, and it's a process that we have to do consciously. And if we take the time to consciously do all of this, wow, so much easier. The lies go away, the excuses go away, many of the conflicts go away, and things just become much more natural, and things just start flowing. And it's a process, but take the time. It's one of the best investments you can make.
Exactly. Get to know you, regenerate you, and have mature communication where you also listen actively to what the other person is saying without trying to fix them or change them. It's very, very useful.
But I think, is there anything else we want to add to this topic?
I
think that wraps it up pretty well. And if you have any questions, any doubts, I mean, we do have the chat, we do have the comment section in the videos on YouTube, and if you want to be notified when we have more of these, subscribe, click the notification bell. If you like this video, give it a like, it helps us out a lot. And if you can't watch these live, I mean, you can listen to it on Spotify or other platforms. And thank you very much for your time, and we'll see you next time, same place, same time, same place next week. Have a good one.
Thank you.